That stew you're eating, there's a rat in it. The ale you're drinking was brewed in a pot where someone washed their feet last week, and the person next to you hasn't bathed in 6 months. Welcome to a real medieval tavern, and if you think that sounds bad, wait until you hear what happened when the lights went out. Everything you've seen in movies about cozy tavern life is a lie, and the truth is so much darker than you'd ever imagine. Forget every fantasy novel you've read. Forget the warm, inviting taverns from your favorite shows. Medieval taverns weren't charming gathering spots with friendly innkeepers and hearty meals. They were necessary evils. Dangerous, filthy spaces where people went because they had to, not because they wanted to. Here's something that'll blow your mind. People drank ale for breakfast. Not because they were alcoholics, but because the water would literally kill you. Rivers were open sewers, wells were contaminated, but alcohol? The brewing process killed most of the deadly bacteria. So everyone, including children, drank weak ale morning, noon, and night just to survive. Taverns weren't just places to drink, though. They were the heartbeat of medieval life. No social media, no coffee shops, no town halls for regular people, just taverns. If you needed work, you went to a tavern. If you wanted news from the next village, tavern. Looking for someone to marry your daughter off to? Believe it or not, tavern. But this came at a price most people today couldn't. Walk into a medieval tavern and the smell hits you like a physical wall. Imagine the worst public bathroom you've ever encountered, then multiply it by 10, add rotting food, and throw in 50 unwashed bodies that haven't seen soap in months. The floor wasn't wood or stone in most places. It was packed dirt, covered in rushes, basically dried grass and reeds. Sounds rustic and charming, right? Wrong. These rushes stayed down for months, sometimes years. They soaked up spilled ale, vomit, blood from fights, and waste from the dogs that roamed freely. All of it just decomposing slowly under everyone's feet. One observer from the time described finding an ancient collection of beer, grease, fragments of fish, and other abominations not fit to be mentioned when old rushes were finally cleared out. Think about that. You're walking on months of accumulated filth with every step. The walls were black, not painted black, black from years of smoke and grease. No chimneys in most taverns, just a hole in the roof if you were lucky. The fire pit sat in the middle of the room, belching smoke that had nowhere to go. Your eyes burned constantly. Your throat felt raw after an hour. And the ceiling? So low that tall men walked hunched over, hitting their heads on the beams that were slick with decades of accumulated grime. Now here's where it gets interesting. There were actually different types of these establishments, and knowing the difference could save your life. Not all medieval drinking holes were created equal. At the top were inns. These were the fancy places, relatively speaking. You could rent an actual bed, though you'd probably share it with 3 strangers. They served better food, or at least food less likely to immediately poison you. Merchants stayed there, wealthy pilgrims, people with actual money. Then came taverns. Originally, these were wine merchants who let people drink on the premises. Wine was expensive, imported, sophisticated. Taverns had pretensions. They wanted to be respectable. They mostly failed, but they tried. At the bottom were alehouses, run by brewwives, women who brewed ale in their homes and sold it from their front rooms. These were the grittiest, most dangerous spots. Tiny spaces packed with laborers, criminals, and people with nothing left to lose. But they were everywhere because brewing was one of the only ways women could earn money independently. All of them were supposed to follow regulations. You couldn't water down your ale. You had to use proper measures. You couldn't let prostitutes work openly on the premises. You couldn't serve known criminals. But enforcement? Practically non-existent. The local authorities were usually drunk in those same taverns. Church officials who were supposed to monitor morality were often the worst offenders. And tavern keepers learned quickly that a few coins in the right hands bought a lot of blind eyes. You're hungry. You've been traveling all day. You sit down at a medieval tavern and order food. Big mistake. That stew sitting in the pot over the fire, it's been there for 3 days. They just keep adding to it. Some meat, some vegetables, whatever they have on hand. Nobody's washing the pot between batches. Whatever was in there yesterday is still in there today, just cooked down and mixed with new ingredients. The bread is stale, always stale, sometimes moldy. You dip it in the stew to soften it because otherwise you'd break your teeth. The meat is questionable at best. Could be mutton, could be pork, could be that stray dog that was hanging around yesterday. Nobody's checking, nobody's asking. And here's a fun fact. Medieval people believed that food didn't go bad, it just changed form. So that meat that smells a little off just needs more spices to balance the humors. That cheese that's growing interesting colors? Totally fine. All cheese looks like that. Those pies that have been sitting out for days in the heat? Probably okay. Probably. Food poisoning was just part of life. Constant stomach problems were normal. You either had a cast iron gut or you didn't survive very long. But the food wasn't the most dangerous thing in a medieval tavern. Not even close. Every single person in a medieval tavern was armed. Knives, daggers, short swords, clubs, tools that could double as weapons. This wasn't paranoia, it was necessity. And when you pack a room full of drunk, armed people with short tempers and strict codes of honor, violence wasn't occasional, it was inevitable. Someone insults your mother, you have to fight or you're a coward. Someone looks at you wrong, that's disrespect, and disrespect demands a response. Someone cheats at dice, that's theft, and thieves deserve punishment. The logic was clear to medieval minds, even if it sounds insane to us. Fights broke out constantly. Most were fistfights or wrestling that ended with bruises and broken furniture. But some escalated. A knife comes out, then another. Someone grabs a stool and swings it at someone's head. The crowd either joins in or scatters, depending on their mood and how much they've had to drink. And here's the thing. Nobody called the authorities. The authorities were corrupt, slow, and often as dangerous as the criminals. Taverns had their own justice system. If you caused trouble, the regulars handled you. Sometimes that meant throwing you out. Sometimes it meant a beating. Sometimes it meant you didn't leave at all. Murders in taverns were common enough that they barely warranted mention in local records. Just another body, just another day. Now, all this violence and chaos created opportunities for certain kinds of business that thrived in the shadows. Every tavern had gambling. Dice were the most popular. Games like Hazard, where you bet on the roll, and the odds changed based on complex rules that were perfect for cheating. Cards existed but were expensive, so mostly the wealthy gambled with those. But people would bet on anything. How long until the next fight breaks out? Whether the drunk in the corner will vomit before he passes out? Which flea would crawl off a dog's back first? Fortunes changed hands every night. Someone would win big and buy rounds for the house, becoming everyone's best friend. An hour later, they'd lose it all and end up in debt to dangerous people. The cycle repeated endlessly, and tavern keepers loved it because gamblers drank more, stayed longer, and spent freely when they were winning. Prostitution operated in a weird legal gray area. Officially illegal, practically tolerated. Working women couldn't survive on honest labor alone. Wages were too low, opportunities too limited. So taverns became marketplaces for sex. Some establishments were more blatant about it than others, but everyone knew what was happening. For the women involved, it was brutal. Disease was rampant. Violence was common. They were blamed for men's moral failings while also being considered necessary to prevent worse crimes. Society wanted their services, but despised them for providing those services. And the authorities? They took bribes from everyone. Tavern keepers paid for protection, gamblers paid to avoid arrest, prostitutes paid for the right to work, thieves paid to fence stolen goods through tavern networks. Everyone paid someone, and the money flowed up through corrupt officials who preached morality on Sunday and collected dirty money the rest of the week. Here's what makes medieval taverns so fascinating. They were absolutely vital to community life. People formed genuine friendships there. Business deals happened. Marriages were arranged. News spread. Culture was created and shared. For many people, especially the poor, taverns were the only social space they had access to. But they were also places of exploitation, violence, disease, and moral compromise. The same space where a craftsman found work was where someone got stabbed over a gambling debt. The same building where travelers found shelter was where women sold their bodies to survive. The same ale that prevented death from bad water slowly poisoned people with every drink. Medieval taverns embodied the full contradiction of human nature, our need for community and our capacity for brutality, our desire for liberation and our enslavement to vice, our nobility and our depravity all mixed together in one smoky, stinking, absolutely essential space. And here's something that'll keep you up tonight. Recent archaeological digs under old tavern sites have found something disturbing in the walls and under the floors. Bodies. Lots of bodies. Way more than historical records ever mentioned, which means either record-keeping was worse than we thought, or medieval taverns were hiding deaths that nobody wanted to explain. The question nobody wants to ask: how many people walked into a tavern one night and simply never walked out? And what happened to them that was so bad, even in that brutal time, that it had to be buried and forgotten?